the same can be said for health and hygiene sort of measures. I think it's really important that you know what to do, not only so that you can stay safe, secure, healthy, but also that you can make sure the team are doing what they're supposed to do. So I thought it'd be useful to run through what might happen on a sort of typical day on expedition, so you have a bit of an idea of what to expect. So whatever time we are waking up, which will have been set the night before by that day's leader. So one of the students will be in charge each day, and that'll be rotated, so they'll know who's going to be leader for the day, and it's their responsibility to sort of set the timings for the day, and they should have based that on where they need to be and when. So, you know, say we needed to take a bus at 9 a.m, they hopefully worked back from that to work out what time they need to have got up, checked out, had breakfast, etc. Equally, every time the group splits, we'll always have a meeting time and a meeting place, so make sure that you as a team member actually know where and when we're supposed to meet, and again that'll have been set by the leader of the day. So it could be a case of we're meeting at, say, 7 a.m. in the lobby of the hotel to gather and go and find a restaurant for breakfast. That could be if we're obviously in a town or a city. Obviously on trek, then we'll all be camping close together, and it could just be a wake-up call, and then individuals or subgroups have sort of roles given to them by the leader of the day. So it could be 4 people are cooking breakfast, 4 people are taking down tents, or whatever. I think it's good to lead by example, so I'll try and always be ready and at the meeting place on time, if not 5 minutes before, dressed appropriately, and putting on sun cream, sun hat, making sure that I have water for the day, making sure that I have whatever group kit I should be carrying, making sure that I actually have a team role myself, or volunteering for a role. So that could be, scheduling me on breakfast duty or whatever. That way I'm sort of not only leading by example, so being a good leader, but also trying to be a good team member as well. So that builds rapport, that builds respect within the team. Each morning, I want the team to be choosing, or every individual to be choosing a buddy for the day, and that is someone that they can check sort of mental health, i.e. if they're feeling happy or not, making sure that they've slept well and are wearing sun cream, they got enough water for the day, have they got the right kit for the day, are they well equipped, well clothed. So definitely take an active sort of leadership role in doing that, and make it obvious so that other team members are taking that seriously, because it is actually an important step for sort of good team dynamics, as well as making sure people aren't getting sick. I find it's pretty common that you'll find waiting around for teams, especially at first. Teenagers' time management doesn't tend to be great. I think a good way you can combat that is, as an individual, being on time, and just trying to encourage others to be on time, and carefully highlighting it when people aren't. Hopefully you can get sort of facilitate the team to highlight it themselves. It can be most effective to bite your tongue, wait for the team to sort of get frustrated with each other, or let them miss something, or let them be late, so they kind of learn by their own mistakes, and or at least facilitate them to get them to talk about it. Something that I'll do early on is just point out that if every time we meet you're this late, it'll add up to this amount of time in the long run, because normal day will be splitting up and meeting several times. Say, for example, it's like our first day in country, then the team might have quite a few things to do, and therefore might need to plan their day well. Food and water are key, and one of the most important things every day. So, normally we're starting the day by getting breakfast somewhere. If we're in a town or city, this could be in a hostel, or it could be in a restaurant. The team might even decide to self-cater if they wanted to save money. And then, the team might need to contact sort of trek providers or project hosts. They might need to buy fuel for cookers. They might need to buy SIM cards for the team phone. They'll get given a smartphone on build-up day that's for viewing their forms, as well as making bookings, as well as being a useful tool for communication, like between the team. They might need to find and buy maps. They might need to confirm bookings. There's often a lot going on in any given day. So I do think it's important to know what the sort of team objectives and plan is, so that we, as an adult leadership team, can be in the most useful position, and also help facilitate the team to achieve whatever it is that they're trying to achieve, and to learn from it. I think one of the most important things as one of the adult leaders is to really not forget the basics, because the students will often be so focused on what they've got to do, or their tasks, or whatever it is, cooking dinner, that they might forget real basic things like food, water, sun cream. Have they got a minimum group? Have they got a meeting time and place? Have they got a hotel contact card, so that if they got lost they can find their way back to the hostel? Have they got a contact card with all of the local numbers in their money belt? Have they considered their next meal? Like real simple things to do with sort of safety and to do with their health, that they might need reminding about. So with that in mind, thinking about this typical day, say it's the first day, you could, and you were with a subgroup, and perhaps their task was to go and buy some food for their acclimatization phase, and you could ask some basic questions like, have we got everyone in this group that we're supposed to have? Are we leaving anyone behind? Have we signed out with our group names and time out on the sign out sheet on the desk, so that as an adult leadership team we can know who is in and who is out of the hotel? Do we know where and when we're meeting again? Do we have what we need? So for everything, every day, the team will need sunglasses, sun cream, their money belts hidden underneath their clothing, with the bulk of their money and passport inside it, waterproofed, in Ziploc bags, their wallet with some spending money in for the day. They'll need team funds if they're going off to purchase the food. So have they got that from the finance team or the budget team? And is it in local currency? Do they need to go and change it to local currency? Have they got appropriate footwear? So if we were, trekking, then that would be boots. If it's in the town, then trainers or sandals. Have they got enough water for walking around the city? It might be far. Have they made a plan of how they're getting there? It might be too far to walk. They might need to get a taxi. And if they need to get a taxi, then do they know the address, or do they have a location on the map? Have they ordered the taxi from the hostel or hotel so they get an official taxi as opposed to just flagging one off the street, which could be unofficial. Do they know to ask for the meter when they get in the taxi, or at least agree a price first? All these things could be questions that you're asking to that sub team to see like how switched on they are. And if you ask them as a question, then it'll get them thinking about it. And if they haven't done it, then we're thinking kind of day one, so you might actually just fire out all those sorts of questions. If it was sort of middle of the trip, and maybe you don't need to, maybe you can see how it goes. Again, there's not a right or wrong answer. If this is the first day we're talking about, then I probably personally would have come round to that sub team and sort of asked them those sorts of questions. Some of that you can tell by just looking. You can see what they're wearing, and you probably have noticed whether or not they've applied their sun cream or whatever it is. So if we are splitting up in towns and cities, then normally we'd obviously meet up as a whole team for lunch, but not necessarily always. If it's early on in the trip, then I'd expect to do that. As the trip progresses, then maybe we might split up for longer periods, depending on how much we're trusting team members and how risky the city or town is that we're in. We would obviously always meet up before dark, because students aren't supposed to be out without an adult leader after dark, and we'd typically always meet up for a team dinner, and we'd normally have a team meeting at some point after dinner. It might be before. Actually, I like to leave that up to the student leaders of the day, but try to do it before team members are too tired. It's always good to finish the day having packed and made a plan for the next day, so that we're starting on the right foot. So just to sort of touch on emergency planning then. So like I mentioned, we're carrying pretty extensive communication devices, so we can get in contact with people more or less anywhere in the world. We, as a part of the safety and backup systems, we have an operations centre that we can get in contact with, who can contact third-party medical providers, so we can get a good medical advice and outside help with organising a rescue should we need it. So say if something does happen, team member is sick or injured, as an expedition leader, I'll nearly always be remaining with the sort of bulk of the main group. That's because obviously, one of the main group could equally fall ill and therefore require emergency planning. Therefore, as a school leader or assistant leader, it's going to be part of your role to join sick or injured team members on their way to hospital. Now, whilst major incidents and accidents are actually really unlikely and rare events, illness and sickness on expedition isn't uncommon, particularly diarrhea and vomiting, and occasionally more weird and wonderful things. So it's not that unlikely that you might at some point have to accompany one of the students to the hospital. Now, obviously, in most normal situations, then if you're male, and it's a male student, then you'd likely to accompany them. If you're female and it's a female student, then you'd be the one accompanying that student. So just like with any time where we have a team split, we want to think about splitting up group funds, so making sure you have enough funds. That said though, medical providers are able to guarantee payment, so you shouldn't actually require paying hospitals directly. You need to make sure we have a meeting time and a meeting place. You have communication device, so a mobile phone or a satellite phone, depending on what the situation is. I'd certainly suggest anytime you're going to the hospital, taking some overnight kit, obviously depending on where the hospital is and what the illness is, but warm clothing and a toothbrush and that sort of thing. Obviously you'll always have your passports and your money belts on you. You'd also take the student's medical card, so that has their medical history and what medications they're taking written on it. So the medical providers would be recommending the best medical facility to go to, and I'll be taking care of all that sort of thing. And depending on the situation, I may well even be organising you transport of getting there and getting back. So you might literally just have to make sure you've got your own personal, kit, warm clothing, and that's about it. It really depends on the situation. Obviously, if we're in the up a mountain or in the jungle, then there's quite a few other factors to consider in terms of evacuating the ill or injured person off. They might need carrying. We might need to get local support. We'll nearly always have local guides who can help in terms of gathering more people if we needed to carry. So it's a whole other subject that I don't really want to go into a lot of depth with right now. I just wanted to get you thinking about it, so you might have more questions. But yeah, to touch a little bit more on the trekking scenario, it might mean that if we're not too far away from civilization, and we had spare porters that are knowledgeable about the local area, or a spare guide, and that the ill person was well enough to say walk for a couple of hours back to the nearest village where they can get a pickup, then that might be the case if you were equally happy with that scenario. It may mean that the entire team needs to divert the trek in order to get to the nearest roadhead or wherever it might be to get a pickup. It may mean that if it's an absolute emergency, that we need to get a helicopter for the injured or ill person. So I'm going to finish with some expedition top tips. Tip number 1, be open-minded. The only constant on expedition is change. I found that expectations in life and on expedition will often lead to disappointment. So just try to have an open mind. Try as best as you possibly can to not have specific expectations. Be flexible. Expect the unexpected. And you will often open yourself to experiences that you weren't expecting and have a better time. In order to be an effective leader or an effective team member, you need to look after number 1, look after yourself. If you don't, then you can't possibly look after other people. So it's really important to try your best to not only for yourself to get enough sleep every night, so 8 hours a night, but also try to facilitate the team so that they're planning each night to get enough sleep. That's when we see the arguments happening and the silly decisions, is when the team haven't had enough sleep and they get grumpy. I know for myself it's very true, because you can probably tell I'm quite grumpy and tired right now. Wash every day, even if it's in a stream or in a bowl of water. Stay clean, wash between the toes, wash your bits and pits. Try to keep talking. Talk to, if you're feeling down, and you will at some point, I guarantee it, you'll have ups and downs. Do try to keep talking. Do keep talking to team members, to myself. Really important for mental health. I recommend that you keep a diary and you take lots of photos. Expeditions can be hectic and very busy, so when possible, take some time to relax. This might be having a little read of your book, this might be taking a nap. Good to be social, but also good to have a bit of me time. I find that's especially important as an adult leader on expedition, just because you're traveling with teenagers for an entire month. You're probably not used to that, and it does take a lot getting used to. So if you need it, just take some time to unwind, to reflect, to relax. Doing a bit of research about the people, the history, the culture, the language, learning some phrases, the religion. It can really help you to engage with the local people and give you a bit of a lens in which to view the country with a bit more insight. Be mindful about being culturally sensitive. Some common themes are covering up, so chest, shoulders, thighs. So basically not wearing your short shorts or your bikini or your crop tops or whatever. Asking permission for photos is just polite. Obviously not photographing police, military. Being respectful in general, particularly when going to someone's home. That might involve taking off your shoes at the door or whatever the locals are doing. If you're not sure, ask a local guide, ask the locals, and be mindful, particularly in places of worship or religious sensitivities. Lots of things that we can do to minimise our impact whilst on expedition. It's good for you to know so that you can be teaching, reminding the students. So that's stuff like buying food with minimal packaging and recycling food packaging where possible. So like going to the market and getting your loose flour or pasta or whatever is obviously using less packaging than buying in the supermarket. We'll be purifying our water, so there's no need to buy bottled water at any point. You can just refill your water bottle, purify it, that way really using less plastic. We will, of course, be provided water purification on build-up days, so no need to worry about that. Take nothing but photos, leave nothing but footprints. The leave no trace ethic, so at campsites or wherever, we'll be doing litter sweeps. If you're washing in streams and rivers, then using biodegradable soap. I'll be teaching the team how to poo outdoors, but basically burning your toilet paper and digging a pit, carbon offsetting, paying a fair price for goods, shopping with locals at local stores and stores at different places to spread around our wealth. If teams are asking you about what gifts to buy, probably better to buy in country and think about educational gifts such as pens, notepads, colouring books, colouring pencils, stationery, as opposed to things like sweets, which might have a negative impact on dental health. Quick little bit on kit. Like I said, really study the kit list, make sure you've got everything, make sure your boots are well worn in. Some useful little bits, little notepad and pen is really key because there's so much to remember every day, particularly if you're giving feedback to the team. You can make notes on team performance to bring up in daily reviews and team meetings. A watch with an alarm, really important. Duct tape wrapped around itself or wrapped around a pen or wrapped around your Nalgene water bottle, that sort of thing, really useful. Good book might also be handy for the long transport times or times in which you're simply waiting around for the team to make a decision. Where possible, sample the local cuisine. So most of the logistics in country, the students are actually going to be organising themselves, and will be facilitating them. So we need to encourage them to be making bookings and confirming bookings well in advance, so that things run smoothly. I have found it's quite common for school leaders to sort of phase out a bit during team meetings, because obviously we're getting the students to lead. So it's easy to not know the plan yourself as a school leader. So do just make sure you do know what the plan is, because it's equally important for you as you are still a team member, to know when we're meeting, where we're going, what you need to bring. It's just as important for you to know as it is for any individual in the team to know. And again, with the whole leading by example, I do think it is good for you to volunteer to be a team member, to have a role yourself, so that there isn't a vibe of a them versus us in the team. I think that can be really important for long-term team dynamics, is to get involved and be a team member, as well as have a bit of a separation and be an adult leader. I do think it is really important, really important, that the team see us as part of the team, as one of them, as on their side, as well as the team. It's important for them to understand why we won't always be giving them answers and telling them what to do, and it's important they understand the benefit of them being allowed freedom to have responsibility, to make mistakes, to learn by doing, to be empowered. So some top tips on personal security that it's important that you know, so you can make sure the team are doing it themselves. Like I mentioned earlier, all money, team money, and as well as personal money team money will be split up, because the budget team will be splitting that up, so that all our eggs aren't in one basket amongst individuals in the team. Might be including us as well, it's up to them. But anyway, that as well as personal money wants to be kept in a sealed sort of freezer bag, so it's waterproof, in your money belt, worn underneath your clothing, so that it's unlikely to be taken in, by pickpockets or muggings. And you have the bulk of your cash in your wallet. You have your money for the day in your wallet, so you can make purchases without having to go into your money belt and pull out big wedges of cash. So towns and cities, particularly tourist areas, particularly inner cities, or any areas with sort of more of a dodgy vibe, or tourist attractions, or busy marketplaces, they're areas of sort of heightened risks for muggings or pickpockets or theft. So it's important the team are more aware during those times. So you might need reminding, and that might just be a case of making sure we're sort of sticking close together. We look like we know what we're doing. We look like we know where we're going. And we don't have our expensive flashy cameras or money belts on the outside, or easily to hand. If you are in a busy crowd where lots of people are bumping into you, then really important to make sure you got good attention on your valuables and other team members. I often will keep my hands in my pockets, guarding my phone and my wallet at that point. And not letting potential muggers sort of distract you, because they'll often work in teams. So buddies for the day should be together, so they can look after each other. Should be a minimum group size of 4 if students are going off without an adult leader. If it's after dark, or if they're going for a significant distance, or perhaps an area of heightened risk, or an area that they're not sure where they're going, then it's going to be wise to have an adult leader go with the team. So the team should be making sure that everyone's there. Yeah, they should be doing head counts and numbering off. I think it's important that we're making sure that everyone is there. I like to be quite subtle when I do this, because if they see me counting everyone, then they're probably not likely to do it themselves, and therefore take less responsibility themselves. So I'll get quite good at just like looking and counting in my head, so they don't actually know I'm doing it. I won't necessarily walk at the back all times. Whilst that's quite sensible in terms of like maximum security, it also makes the team just think, oh well, James is at the back, we don't need to pay attention. So early on I might actually walk in the middle or near, like not at the front, because then they're looking at me for guidance or navigation, but I won't necessarily walk at the back, but I'll always clock who's at the back and keep checking that they are still there, and really keep aware of who's at the back. And obviously if it's super busy, then I'll just slip to the back of the group. So make sure the team are looking after their kit, they're not leaving it lying around so it can be stolen. If it's a campsite, everything should be packed away at night. If it's in a bus station or whatever, we need to be super vigilant on our bags. You should always be able to see your bag or have your buddy looking after your bag, and it should be by your side really. Otherwise someone might wander off with it. So we need to be encouraging the team to be looking behind their shoulder and they're walking around at all times, so that they're not leaving someone behind. Individuals should know who's in their group for that part of the day, so that they're not potentially losing someone and not realising it. They should be signing out as a team if they're going off in a town or city, on a sign-in, sign-out sheet at the hostel or hotel reception desk, as well as telling myself, or if I'm not around, and potentially one of you guys, provided that we've sort of talked about that before and that's okay. It is really important that I know where people are going, and where, when they're planning to return, and that they do know where they're off to. Like I said before, every individual should be carrying a copy of the address of the hotel, our in-country phone numbers, the in-country agent's phone number, the World Challenge number, so that if they were lost, they can call me, or they can call World Challenge, or they can call the in-country agent, or at least just at the end of the day they can always hop in a taxi if they're super lost, and find their way back to the hotel or hostel, which will normally be our sort of backup meeting area if we have got a lost person procedure. So when you're going off with sort of smaller groups, or even as a big team, just be super vigilant of road traffic. It's one of the riskier parts of expedition travel, and particularly like crossing the road, just be super aware that the team are sort of following how I've trained them really, which sort of involves all crossing together and walking, not running, and crossing where locals cross. Sounds simple, but it's super important. So moving on to health and hygiene. So let's start with hydration. So it is obviously important that everyone in the team is drinking sufficient fluids in order to stay hydrated, so that they've got a couple bursting bladders of urine minimum per day, that their urine is straw coloured and isn't dark yellow, How much water they might be drinking depends on what they're doing and the environment. It could be anything between 2 and maybe 5 or 6 litres if it's super humid and super hot. But that obviously also depends on their body size as well as the environment. Again, this is an area where it's super important to encourage the buddy system and they're checking up on each other. So common for teenagers to be rubbish at drinking water. So do make sure we're checking for signs of dehydration, such as headaches, nausea, loss of appetite, dark coloured urine, and do really be encouraging drinking throughout the day. If a particular individual is struggling with drinking enough, I've found just putting some like cordial or flavoured sachets in their water sometimes helps. Food is fuel, super important to eat enough and get enough calories. So it's really important that we're checking the team are going to be purchasing enough food so they're eating sufficiently, as well as a healthy diet can make a big difference to team morale and energy levels long term. And so do be keeping an eye out during meal times that people have been eating enough. It's obviously super common to get eating disorders, and just with a change in diet, and even if you've got picky kids, picky students, then super important that we're just keeping an eye out and putting the right support in place if there is a team member that's not eating sufficiently. So some examples of higher risk food types that may have more pathogens in. So anything that might have been washed in the local water or unpurified water, such as salads or unpeeled fruits, anything that hasn't been cooked properly or at a high enough temperature. So much better to go for something that's cooked fresh at a high temperature, especially if you can see it being prepared and cooked in front of you and it hasn't been sat around for flies to land on and for bacteria to reproduce. Ice cream that isn't in a sort of manufactured package, ice in water that may well have been made from local unpurified water. And I'd say meats in general tend to be higher risk than the vegetarian options. When going into a food establishment or a restaurant, take a bit of a holistic approach. If it looks dodgy and it looks dirty, then it probably is. Always good to see where it's popular with the locals. A high turnover is a good sign. And if you can see a rat running around in the kitchen, then it's probably dodgy and it's probably better to eat somewhere else. Quite good if you can see into the kitchen and just get a general vibe for how clean or / how dirty it looks. We really want to encourage the team to be sort of self-reporting for illness. Diarrhea is so common, so I'm going to try and break down the social barriers of diarrhea on expedition early on by introducing a poo scale. Anyway, you're going to learn all about it, but it's really just to get them to be open and honest about when they're sick so that we can treat them properly. Random top tip: always put your head torch in the same place so you can find it when it's dark. Okay, I'm going to talk really briefly then about some expedition roles that the team may choose to have. So the budget team or the finance team will obviously be looking after the monies. So they'll collect the funds at the start of the trip, normally at the airport, and then they'll need to count the money, split it up so that all the eggs aren't in one basket. And then they have a budget sheet, which is a bit of a guide on where they need to spend the money and roughly how much. they'll obviously need to keep track of expenditure and work out, how much money they have left compared to how much money they should have. Budgeting is definitely something that requires a bit more support compared to the other roles, and therefore maybe getting one of you guys stuck in and involved with helping with that if you're up for it. They should really be working out their totals at the end of each day, so they're keeping on top of the budget and adjusting spending accordingly. So normally, other than the first sort of airport transfer in country, all other transport may well need to be booked by the team, so there'll be a transport team to do that. The security team to stay on top of personal security, some of the subjects that we talked about in this video. Some student medics to take care of minor injuries. As you can see in this picture, don't recommend flip-flops, this is why. Navigation team just to sort of take charge of sourcing maps and sorting out who's navigating each day. Food team to plan food, so this might be selecting the restaurant, it might be making a plan of what food we're going to buy for a particular self-catering phase, as well as organising who's doing the food preparation. A communication team, this might be someone to look after the in-country phone or the smartphone and get SIM cards, make sure the SIM cards are topped up and the phone stays charged. R&R organisers, rest and relaxation, so often get particular people in charge of organising a particular R&R time or event, which is sort of similar to a phase leader. So I might get an individual or a couple of people to sort of be a phase leader, so that's someone to oversee a whole phase. So it might be a project phase leader, and their role might be to oversee the whole project phase. That normally just involves contacting the project host beforehand, seeing what the deal is with tasks and materials, and then overseeing the phase as a whole by sort of setting realistic aims and objectives. Whereas leaders of the day, they might be more involved in tasks for that day and meeting times and overseeing like what we're doing for that day. Sub-team to look after group equipment and source and buy whatever group equipment we might need. So that concludes my adult leadership team video. I hope it's been insightful and helpful. Sorry I've been sort of doing a lot of ums and ahs, a little bit tired during this video. I also have a PDF that I'm going to email to you that's just like some adult leadership team advice, which hopefully is written a bit more coherently than I'm chatting now, because a little bit tired. If you have any questions, then obviously shoot me an email. Well done for making it through all of this video. My final piece of advice, I guess, would be to stop worrying. Don't worry so much. Everything will be all right. I haven't gone into depth with a lot of subjects on this video that I could have done, because it's already a really long video. But you don't need to worry, because I have a ton of experience. I've led about 17 youth development expeditions. So you can follow my lead as much as you wish, and let's have a fun trip, a successful trip, and I look forward to seeing you soon, and I shall be in touch. So speak to you soon.